She beat him in 3 moves. He owned half of Manhattan. But the moment her hand hovered over that final piece, everything he'd built, the empire, the armor, the loneliness, cracked wide open. The ballroom glittered like a jewelry box someone had shaken too hard. Zara Moretti moved through it like a ghost, silver tray balanced on her palm, white server uniform crisp and anonymous. She'd learned to be invisible here, in these rooms where champagne cost more than her monthly rent and laughter sounded like crystal breaking. Her eyes, though, missed nothing. She cataloged exits, counted guests, calculated tips with the precision of someone who knew exactly how many shifts stood between her and eviction. "Excuse me, miss?" A woman in a gown that cost more than Zara's entire education snapped her fingers. "More champagne. Quickly." Zara smiled. The smile she'd perfected. The one that said yes ma'am while her mind said checkmate in 6 moves. She poured, nodded, disappeared back into the current of servers flowing between Manhattan's elite. This was the annual Cross Foundation Gala, Nathaniel Cross's charity spectacle. She'd heard the other servers whispering about him. Tech billionaire, self-made, 35, and untouchable. Built an AI empire from a Brooklyn basement. Now he threw parties where people donated millions just to stand near him. Zara didn't care about billionaires. She cared about the $200 she'd make tonight. The $1,847 she'd saved toward tournament entry fees. The chess clock ticking in her mind, always ticking, counting down to the international qualifying match in Prague she'd been dreaming about since her father died. 3 years, Zara. 3 years of double shifts and sleeping on couches and pretending you're not brilliant. She was tired. God, she was tired. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Across the ballroom, Nathaniel Cross stood at the center of a constellation of power. He wore his tuxedo like armor, his smile like a shield. Senators, CEOs, celebrities, they all orbited him, waiting for a moment of his attention, a word that might change their fortune. He gave them what they wanted: charm, confidence, the illusion of accessibility. Inside, he was calculating their exits. Stevens wants an intro to my VC network. Diane's angling for a board seat. Marcus, no, Martin, wants me to meet his daughter. Everyone wanted something. No one wanted him. He'd built Cross Technologies from nothing, 2 laptops and an algorithm that changed cloud computing forever. Made his first billion at 28. Built an empire by 30. And somewhere in the building, he'd lost the ability to tell the difference between genuine and performance. Nathaniel. A hand clapped his shoulder. Senator Ridgemont, bourbon-breathed and eager. Hell of a party. Listen, about that infrastructure contract. Nathaniel smiled, excused himself, moved to the next cluster of people who saw him as a means to an end. This is what you wanted, he reminded himself. Power. Security. Control. Then why did it feel like drowning in an empty room? Ladies and gentlemen. The event coordinator's voice cut through the crowd. Mr. Cross has generously agreed to a special exhibition this evening. Nathaniel turned, confused. He hadn't agreed to. A friendly chess match. The coordinator beamed, gesturing to an antique board set up on a stage. Mr. Cross was a collegiate champion, and he's offered to play any brave soul willing to challenge him. The crowd applauded. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. His PR team had ambushed him again. Good optics, they'd say. Humanizing. He forced a smile, climbed the stage steps. Fine. Chess, he could do. Chess was one of the few things in his life that still made sense. He scanned the crowd, looking for the inevitable volunteer his team had planted. Any brave soul. The room murmured, nervous laughter rippling through the guests. Zara stood in the service corridor, peeling off her serving gloves. Her break. 15 minutes. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Through the doorway, she could see the stage, the chessboard, the billionaire settling into his chair with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been truly beaten. Something in her chest tightened. She knew that arrogance. Had seen it in every tournament, Every club, every room where men assumed her gender meant weakness, where they smiled and said good game before she'd even moved her first pawn. She should walk away, clock in, finish her shift. Instead, she watched. A nervous hedge fund manager climbed the stage. Nathaniel demolished him in 12 moves, barely looking at the board. The crowd applauded. The manager slunk away, red-faced. Anyone else? Nathaniel's voice carried that specific tone of someone who knew the answer would be no. Zara's father's voice echoed in her memory. The best players, Principessa, they get comfortable. Comfortable is where you strike. She shouldn't. She really shouldn't. Her feet were already moving. The room noticed her before he did. A server, still in uniform, name tag slightly crooked, walking toward the stage with steady steps. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Zara felt every eye on her, every judgment, but her father's training held. Never let them see you doubt. She climbed the steps. Nathaniel looked up, his expression shifting from boredom to confusion. I think you're looking for the kitchen. I'll play. Her voice cut clean through his dismissal. Silence. Heavy and thick. His eyes narrowed, reassessing. She met his gaze without flinching. Up close, she could see he wasn't what she'd expected. There was something sharp behind the polished exterior, something lonely in the way he held himself separate even while surrounded. You play chess. His tone wasn't mocking exactly, just surprised. I've been known to. She pulled out the chair across from him, sat down. The crowd murmured louder now, uncertain laughter. Someone whispering, is this part of the show? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone the room had already dismissed. White or black? Black. Always black. She played better from the response position. He moved his pawn to e4. Standard king's pawn opening. Confident. She responded immediately, e5. The crowd pressed closer. Nathaniel moved again, bishop to c4. Aggressive. Showy. He was playing to the audience, not the board. Mistake. Zara moved her knight to f6, her hand steady despite her racing heart. Nathaniel barely glanced at her move. He was already reaching for his queen, that same easy confidence radiating from him. Queen to f3. The crowd oohed. It looked dangerous. It was a gift. Zara felt the familiar calm descend, the rest of the room fading, time slowing. This was where she lived. Not in ballrooms or server uniforms or the narrow space between rent and ruin. Here, in the 64 squares where brilliance mattered more than breeding. She moved her knight to c6. Nathaniel frowned slightly, first sign of real attention. He studied the board for 3 seconds longer than his previous moves. Then he moved his queen to f7. Checkmate, his posture said. Sorry, sweetheart, better luck next time. The crowd started to applaud. Zara reached out, her fingers steady on her bishop, and moved it to c5. The applause died. Nathaniel stared at the board. His face went pale, then red. She watched him see it. Really see it. The trap he'd walked into with his arrogance and his showmanship and his assumption that she couldn't possibly. Check, she said softly. His king had nowhere to go. His queen blocked one escape. Her pieces controlled the others. 3 moves. She'd beaten him in 3 moves. The room erupted. Gasps, laughter, shocked applause. Someone shouted, "Holy shit." Another pulled out their phone, already recording. Nathaniel sat frozen, staring at the board like it had betrayed him. Then slowly, painfully, his eyes lifted to hers. For one moment, she saw past the armor. Saw shock, humiliation, and something else, something that looked like hunger. Zara leaned forward, close enough that only he could hear. Checkmate, Mr. Cross. Then she stood, smoothed her uniform, and walked off the stage. Behind her, the ballroom exploded into chaos. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her all the way to the exit. Zara made it halfway across the ballroom before the hand caught her elbow. Mississippi Miss. A security guard, broad-shouldered and apologetic. Mr. Cross has requested you stay. Her stomach dropped. Requested. That word men like him used when they meant commanded. I'm on break. It's not a request. Another guard materialized at her other side. Not threatening, exactly. Just immovable. The crowd was still buzzing, Phone's out, already posting. She caught fragments. Did you see? A waitress, 3 moves. They walked her to a private corridor off the main hall. Cream walls, abstract art, the kind of quiet that cost money. She'd been in enough luxury hotels to know this was where the real power lived, away from the performance. Nathaniel appeared from a side door. He'd shed the easy smile. What remained was sharper, colder. A man who built empires didn't get there by accepting humiliation gracefully. Leave us. He didn't look at the guards. They evaporated. Zara lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. If you're going to fire me, just do it. I need to get back to. Fire you. He laughed, short, bitter. I want a rematch. No. The word landed between them like a slap. His expression shifted, surprise, then something darker. Excuse me. You heard me. She was trembling now, adrenaline crashing, but she held her ground. I'm not your entertainment. I'm not here to soothe your ego. My ego. His voice dropped dangerously low. You humiliated me in front of 300 people. You humiliated yourself. The words came out sharper than she intended. You weren't playing chess. You were performing. There's a difference. His jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he might explode. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar sharp. Who are you? Does it matter? She tried to sidestep him. He moved with her, blocking the exit without touching her. It matters. Something raw crept into his voice. How did you 3 moves? 3 moves. I've been playing since I was 6. Then you should know better than to assume your opponent is inferior just because they're serving your drinks. Direct hit. She saw it land. The flinch, the flash of something that might have been shame. I wasn't. He stopped, ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, destroying it. That's not what I... Yes, it was. She was exhausted suddenly. Exhausted from being invisible, from fighting, from one moment of victory already turning into another battle. You want to know who I am? I'm nobody. I'm the person you don't see. And now you do, and you can't stand it. That's not. I'm leaving. Wait. His hand shot out, not grabbing, just reaching. Please. The please stopped her. It sounded unpracticed, rusty, like a word he didn't use often. She turned, found him looking at her with something between desperation and fury. One rematch, he said. Name your terms. Anything. Why? Because, he stopped, seemed to struggle with the truth. Because no one's made me feel anything real in 5 years. And I need to understand how. The honesty stole her breath. But she'd learned long ago, men like him collected things. Experiences. Trophies. No, she whispered. Then she walked away from the first person who'd looked at her like she was extraordinary. It felt like losing. 3 days later, Zara arrived at the Riverside Community Center with a headache and $14 in her bank account. The center was her sanctuary, a converted warehouse in Queens where she taught chess to kids who looked like she once did. Hungry, brilliant, invisible to the world that mattered. She pushed through the double doors and froze. New equipment. Everywhere. Pristine chess sets replaced the battered ones held together with tape. Digital clocks instead of the broken timer they'd shared. Boards, books, even new chairs. Surprise. Maria, the center director, practically glowed. An anonymous donor covered our funding for the entire year. Can you believe it? We were about to close in. Zara's blood went cold. Anonymous. Completely. The lawyer wouldn't say, just that someone believed in our mission. Maria kept talking, but Zara wasn't listening anymore. Because she saw him. Nathaniel Cross sat at one of the new boards in the corner, setting up pieces with careful precision, looking completely out of place in his tailored wool coat among second-hand furniture and crayon drawings. Her vision tunneled. She crossed the room in 5 strides. What the hell are you doing here? He looked up and had the audacity to smile. Learning. You're the teacher, aren't you? You. She lowered her voice, aware of Maria and the kids watching. You can't just buy your way into. I didn't buy anything. He gestured at the room. I funded a community program that was closing. Seemed like a good investment. His eyes met hers, challenging. Unless you'd prefer they shut down? The trap closed perfectly around her. Refuse him, and she'd be the one hurting the kids. Accept, and he'd won. You're a bastard. I've been called worse. He moved a pawn. Are you going to teach me, or should I ask one of them? She wanted to flip the board. Instead, she pulled out a chair, sat down with enough force to make it scrape. Fine, but we play by my rules. Wouldn't have it any other way. The lessons became a war conducted across 64 squares. He showed up every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. after the kids' session. Always punctual, always prepared, and infuriatingly, genuinely trying to learn. Zara had expected arrogance. Instead, she got focus. You're playing scared, she said the second week, moving her rook. Stop thinking about winning. Think about the story. Chess doesn't tell stories. Everything tells stories. She captured his bishop. Right now, you're a king surrounded by soldiers. Defensive. Isolated. You need to let your pieces talk to each other. Something flickered across his face. Is that what you do? I make them dance. She smiled despite herself. Your move. He studied the board for a long moment. Then, instead of the aggressive play she expected, he moved his knight backward, a defensive retreat that opened space for his queen. Better, she admitted. You're a good teacher. He looked up. Why here? You could be competing. Internationally. The question landed too close to wounds she kept covered. Tournaments cost money. How much? More than you'd understand. His expression tightened. Try me. She almost told him. Almost explained about the $3,000 entry fee for Prague, the flight, the hotel. How she'd been saving for 2 years and was still $1,200 short. Instead, she moved her queen. Checkmate in 4 moves. Figure it out. He bent over the board, and she watched him think. Really think. His brow furrowed, fingers drumming the table. And for the first time since the gala, she saw him as something other than a billionaire. She saw him as a player. I can't see it, he admitted finally. That's because you're still playing alone. She reset the board. Again. He smiled, small, genuine. Again. Outside, the sun set over Queens, painting the warehouse windows gold. Neither of them noticed they'd stopped keeping score. It was week 3 when Nathaniel arrived early and found her sleeping. She'd curled up on the worn sofa in the center's office, her jacket bunched as a pillow, one hand still clutching a chess strategy book. The afternoon light caught the dark circles under her eyes, the way her uniform from her morning shift was wrinkled and coffee-stained. He stood in the doorway, something cracking open in his chest. She startled awake at his footsteps, bolting upright, disoriented. What time is it? 4:15. He stayed where he was, hands in his pockets. How long have you been here? I don't. She rubbed her face, trying to orient herself. Since my shift ended. I must have. Zara. He used her name for the first time since learning it from Maria. Where do you live? The question hung there, heavy with implications. That's none of your business. You're sleeping on a sofa in a community center. I was resting. Don't. His voice was gentle but firm. Don't insult my intelligence. Not after everything. She met his eyes, and he saw the exact moment she decided truth was less exhausting than deflection. My roommate's boyfriend moved in. 3 people in a studio doesn't work. She stood, started folding her jacket with precise, controlled movements. I'm crashing with friends. Rotating. It's temporary. How temporary? Until Prague. The words came out quiet. There's a qualifying tournament. International. If I place top 3, I get sponsors. Real ones. Could go professional. When? 6 weeks. She wouldn't look at him. Entry fee is $3,000. I have $1,800. The math was brutal. He did it instantly. Her wages, her timeline. She wouldn't make it. Let me. No. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were fierce. Don't you dare. Don't you dare make this about your money. It's not about. It is. It always is. Her voice cracked. You think I don't know what happens? You write a check. I go to Prague, and then what? I owe you. Everyone owes you. That's how your world works. That's not. He stopped, because wasn't it? Hadn't every relationship in his life been transactional? What if it wasn't a gift? A loan. I don't need rescue. She was shaking now. I need what I've always needed. For someone to see me as more than a project or a charity case or a, I see you. The word stopped her. Nathaniel stepped closer, his own walls crumbling. You want to know why I keep coming back? It's not the chess. It's not the ego. It's because you're the first person in 5 years who's looked at me and seen past the money. That's not. My parents died when I was 19. The confession tumbled out, raw and unpracticed. Car accident. I built Cross Technologies because I needed to control something, needed to matter. And somewhere in the building, I forgot what mattering actually meant. He laughed, bitter. I have 1,000 friends, and I've never been lonelier. Then you beat me in 3 moves and what? And I felt alive. His voice broke on the word. For the first time since I was a kid playing chess with my dad in our kitchen. You didn't want my money or my connections. You just played. Like the game mattered. Like I mattered, not what I could buy. Silence stretched between them, charged and fragile. Zara's expression softened. Your father taught you? Every Sunday morning. Before the accident. He smiled sadly. I haven't played for love of the game in years. Just strategy. Networking. Until you. She reached out slowly, her hand hovering, then settling on his arm. I'm sorry. So am I. They stood there in the dying light, two brilliant, lonely people finally seeing each other clearly. The lessons changed after that. They stopped pretending it was only about chess. Nathaniel started showing up with coffee, her order, which he'd somehow learned, and they'd play in the center's courtyard when weather allowed. Sometimes they talked strategy. Sometimes they talked about everything else. Okay, truth, Zara said one evening, moving her night. Worst business decision you ever made? Trusted my college roommate with equity. Nathaniel grimaced. He sold his shares to a competitor, almost tanked us. Cost me $12 million to fix. Ouch. Your turn. Worst chess match. She was quiet for a moment. Nationals. 3 years ago. I made it to the semifinals. Played against Viktor Kozlov, you know him? Russian grandmaster. Arrogant bastard. That's generous. She smiled tightly. He spent the entire match making comments. About my appearance, my feminine intuition, how I must have gotten there by. She stopped. I lost focus. Lost the match. Haven't competed seriously since. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He's speaking at a tech conference I'm hosting next month. Don't. I'm uninviting him. Nathaniel. I'm uninviting him, and I'm inviting you. As my guest. You can watch me humiliate him in the Q&A. His grin was wicked. What? I'm petty when it comes to people I care about. The words hung there. People I care about. Zara felt her chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with chess. They started meeting outside the center. Coffee shops in Brooklyn where nobody knew his face. Late-night diners where they solved chess puzzles on paper napkins. A park in Queens where they played speed chess on a weathered stone board, arguing and laughing as strangers watched. You're infuriating, she said after he found a fork she'd missed. You're insufferable, he countered, grinning. You're arrogant. You're stubborn. You talk too much. You don't talk enough. They were leaning close over the board now, faces inches apart, both breathing hard from laughter and something else entirely. Zara, his voice went soft. Don't. But she didn't move away. Why not? Because this, she gestured between them. This doesn't happen to people like me. This is a story you'll tell at parties. Remember that waitress who beat me at chess? And I'll be back to. Stop. He caught her hand, gentle but firm. Stop deciding how I feel. Stop deciding what this is. Then what is it? I don't know. He laughed, helpless. I've negotiated billion-dollar deals. I can't find the words for this. All I know is that I think about you constantly. The way your mind works. The way you smile when you find a brilliant move. How you make me want to be better. Not richer, not more successful. Just better. Her eyes glistened. I'm scared. Of what? That I'm falling for someone I can't keep. What if he squeezed her hand? What if you already have? And what if I'm falling too? She looked at him, really looked, and saw the same fear reflected back. The same desperate hope. Checkmate, she whispered. Checkmate, he agreed. They kissed there in the park, surrounded by strangers and pigeons and the distant sound of traffic. It tasted like coffee and courage and the terrifying possibility of something real. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling through tears. I still beat you, she said. Every single time. He kissed her forehead. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Have you ever been afraid to let someone in because you thought they'd leave once they really knew you? How did you find the courage? Share your story below. The photo went viral on a Tuesday. Zara was restocking shelves at her morning job when her phone exploded with notifications. Text after text from numbers she didn't recognize. She opened Instagram with shaking hands. There it was. Her and Nathaniel at the park, kissing. The photo cropped and filtered and accompanied by a headline that made her stomach turn. Billionaire's new charity case. Cross slumming it with waitress. The article was vicious. It dissected her jobs, her lack of degree, her convenient chess skills. Called her calculating, gold digger, social climber. The comments were worse. He's clearly bored and playing poverty tourist. She saw a meal ticket and took it. Give it 2 months before he trades up. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. By noon, it was everywhere. Gossip sites, Twitter, TikTok breakdowns analyzing their body language and power imbalance. Someone had found footage from the gala, captioned, "The long game," literally. Maria called. "Zara, honey, are you okay? The press is calling the center." She hung up. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the humiliation crawling under her skin like insects. Nathaniel called 17 times. She ignored everyone. He showed up at the center that evening. She was packing her chest set, hands mechanical, eyes dry because she'd cried herself empty hours ago. "Zara, don't." Her voice was flat. "Dead. Let me explain." "Explain what?" She finally looked at him. "That you didn't leak it? I know you didn't. But it doesn't matter. This is who you are. Your world, where everything I do gets dissected and judged and turned into entertainment. I'll fix it. I'll sue them, release a statement." "And say what?" She laughed, bitter and broken. "That I'm not what they say? That'll just make it worse. They'll dig deeper. Find out I'm homeless. That I'm desperate. They'll make it all true. It's not true, isn't it?" Her voice cracked. "Be honest, Nathaniel. When you met me, what did you see? A puzzle to solve. A game that beat you. Something interesting after years of boring people who all wanted the same thing. That's not. You never saw me." The words came out raw, accusatory. "You saw a project. Someone you could fix, elevate, save. The brilliant poor girl who just needed the right benefactor. I was never your equal. I was your redemption story. That's not fair." Fair. She was shouting now, months of fear and exhaustion and hope all curdling into rage. "You want to talk about fair? I've spent my entire life being invisible. Then 3 moves and suddenly I'm somebody. But only because you decided I was worth noticing. And now the whole world thinks I'm using you. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am. Because what else could I possibly offer someone like you except entertainment?" The words hit him like physical blows. She watched him flinch, watched something break behind his eyes. "You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore." She zipped her bag with shaking hands. "I just know I can't be your project. You're proof that you're still human. I can't be the story you tell yourself about connection while everyone else sees a transaction. Zara, please. I need you to leave. Don't do this. Leave." He stood there, devastated, reaching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, not turning around, "you're wrong. You were never a project. You were the first person who made me remember who I was before I became what everyone needed me to be." Then he left. Zara stood alone in the empty center, surrounded by the equipment he'd bought, holding the chess set her father had given her. And finally, she let herself break. Nathaniel didn't sleep for 3 days. He tried working, buried himself in code and meetings and the familiar, numbing rhythm of empire building. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. The way she'd looked at him like he'd betrayed her. Like he was exactly what she'd feared from the beginning. "You never saw me." The accusation haunted him. Had he? Or had he done exactly what she said? Seen a puzzle, a game, something to solve and possess? He sat in his penthouse at 3 a.m., the city glittering below like scattered diamonds, and played through their games. Every match they'd shared, reconstructed from memory on his antique board. She'd been teaching him more than chess. She'd been teaching him to see, to listen, to play for the love of it, not the win. And he'd loved her for it. Loved her, not the idea of saving someone, not the ego boost of being chosen by someone brilliant, but her stubbornness and her fire and the way she saw through every defense he'd built. He'd loved her, and he'd lost her because he'd never told her she was right. She was his equal. She always had been. The Prague qualifying tournament was in 2 weeks. Nathaniel made calls, pulled strings, found out she still hadn't registered, couldn't afford it. His first instinct was to pay, wire the money anonymously, ensure she got her shot. Then he stopped himself. I don't need rescue. I need respect. If he paid, he'd prove her right, that he saw her as a project, someone to save. Instead, he made a different call. To the International Chess Federation. To tournament organizers. To sponsors he knew personally. I'm not funding her, he said carefully. I'm asking you to look at her record. Really look. She's been winning underground tournaments for 3 years. Playing at master level without any backing. And you're telling me she's not worth a sponsorship? It took 6 calls. 7. 10. Finally, we'll review her file. That's all I'm asking. Review it fairly. If she earns it, she earns it. He hung up, chest tight with hope and terror. It might not be enough. She might still hate him. But at least he'd done the one thing that mattered. He'd seen her for who she was, not who he could make her. A week later, he went to the center one last time. She wasn't there. Maria said she'd stopped teaching, hadn't been by in days. She left this for you. Maria handed him an envelope. Inside, a handwritten note on lined paper. Nathaniel, I got a sponsorship. International Chess Federation. They said someone recommended they review my record, but they wouldn't say who. I know it was you. I'm angry because you did exactly what I asked you not to do. And I'm grateful because you did it the only way I could accept. I'm going to Prague. I'm going to play. And I'm going to win. Not for you. Not because of you, but because it's what I've always been meant to do. But I need you to know, I was wrong. You did see me. Maybe better than I saw myself. I was just too scared to let you. If you still want that rematch, I'll be at the stone board. Saturday. 4 p.m. Maybe this time, we both win. Z. Nathaniel read it 3 times. Then he checked his calendar. Saturday was in 2 days. He had time to be terrified. Time to doubt. Time to talk himself out of it. Instead, he went home and practiced. Not to beat her. To be worthy of playing her again. Saturday came wrapped in autumn gold. Nathaniel arrived at the park at 3:45, heart hammering against his ribs. The stone chessboard sat empty, pieces scattered from someone's abandoned game. He reset them carefully, hands steadier than he felt. 4 o'clock passed. Then 4:15. She's not coming. He'd ruined it. Pushed too hard, or not hard enough, or, you're early. He turned. She stood there in jeans and a worn leather jacket, hair loose around her shoulders, looking nervous and beautiful and real. I'm always early for important games, he managed. She crossed to the board, sat down across from him. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Really looked, without walls or fear or the weight of what the world thought. I leave for Prague in 4 days, she said finally. I know. The sponsorship was legitimate. They reviewed my record. Said I should have been on their radar years ago. You should have been. But you made the call. I made a recommendation. He held her gaze. You earned everything else. I just opened a door you deserve to walk through. Her eyes glistened. That's the difference, isn't it? Between rescue and respect. I'm learning. He smiled sadly. Slow learner, apparently. You beat yourself up enough yet? Not nearly. She reached across the board, her hand covering his. I was scared. Of wanting something I thought I couldn't keep. Of being seen completely and found wanting. So I pushed you away before you could leave. I wasn't going anywhere. I know that now. She squeezed his hand. The question is, do you still want this? Want me? Because I come with instability and pride and a tendency to run when things get real. I'm not a fairy tale. Good. He turned his hand, laced their fingers together. I don't want fairy tales. I want someone who beats me at chess and calls me on my bullshit and makes me remember that money isn't the same as worth. His voice dropped. I want you. Messy and brilliant and terrifying. All of it. Even when I'm insufferable. Especially then. She laughed, real and bright, and stood, pulling him up with her. They met in the middle, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. I'm going to Prague, she whispered. I know. And I'm going to win. I know that too. And when I come back, I'll be here. He pulled back just enough to see her eyes, playing badly and waiting for you to destroy me again. She kissed him then, soft and certain and full of promise. When they broke apart, she gestured at the board. One game before I go. Always. They played as the sun set over queens, two brilliant, broken people who'd found each other across 64 squares. She won, obviously. He didn't mind, because losing to her felt like winning everything that mattered. The wedding was small, intimate, just people who actually mattered. Instead of traditional vows, they'd set up a chessboard at the altar. The officiant raised an eyebrow, but allowed it. Ready? Zara asked, radiant in a simple silk dress, her international master title newly earned, her smile devastating. Always, Nathaniel replied. She moved first. 3 moves later, she had him in checkmate, the same brilliant trap from the gala, executed perfectly. The crowd erupted in applause and laughter. Nathaniel stood, took her hand, kissed her knuckles with exaggerated reverence. My wife, ladies and gentlemen, still undefeated, and still hungry, she said, grinning. Did I mention the reception has a buffet? He laughed, pulled her close, whispered against her hair, I love you. I know. She looked up at him, eyes bright with joy and mischief. You're terrible at hiding it. Worst poker face I've ever seen. Good thing we play chess then. Good thing. They kissed while their friends cheered. 2 people who'd learned that the best victories aren't about winning. They're about finding someone worth losing to. Someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen, flaws and all, and chosen anyway. Who in your life sees you completely? Drop a heart in the comments for them, or tag someone who needs to hear this today. Thank you for watching to the end. I believe you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting stories like this lined up for you already, so click the image showing on your screen to watch the next.